Well, it's only February, but we're already looking at three of the most important phones of the year: the Galaxy S20, S20 Plus, and the S20 Ultra. These are the devices that most people buying an Android phone in 2020 will have their sights set on, and while yes, they've been leaked all to hell, believe me, the leaks don't tell the full story. I'm Hayato with Android Central, and this is Samsung's new flagship lineup. Samsung has been delivering outstanding build quality for years now, and the S20 is no exception. You get the familiar glass and metal design language that's more or less been around since the Galaxy S6, but you've undoubtedly already noticed the biggest change with this year's selection: the massive new camera housings. Samsung is putting a big emphasis on just how much it's improved its cameras with the S20. The company's well aware of its shortcomings in low light and shooting moving objects, so it's starting from the ground up with dramatically larger sensors, some as much as 3 times larger than on the Galaxy S10, which should help bring in more light, detail, and clarity. We'll talk more about the cameras in a second, but first let's break down the 3 different models here. The Galaxy S20 and S20 Plus serve as direct sequels to their S10 counterparts, but there's no cheaper E variant this time around. Instead, we get the Galaxy S20 Ultra that, in Samsung's words, pushes the boundaries of smartphones and smartphone photography. The S20 Ultra is absolutely enormous. At 220 grams, it's nearly half a pound, and it's 13% thicker than the S10 Plus, which was already a pretty big phone. With that said, it still feels strangely manageable, but if you want a more reasonably sized phone, you should definitely look at the S20 or S20 Plus instead. Now, all 3 models are armed with the latest Snapdragon 865 processor, and all 3 are 5G ready, though where the standard S20 only supports sub-6, the pricier 2 also support millimeter wave. That's undoubtedly going to raise some concerns surrounding battery life, and your city may not even support 5G yet, but with the 865 requiring a 5G modem, that's just how most 2020 flagship releases are going to be. If nothing else, you can just think of this as future-proofing for now. Up front, you get a 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED panel on the S20, 6.7 on the S20 Plus, and a nice 6.9 inches on the S20 Ultra. No matter what size you get, they've all finally been updated with a 120Hz refresh rate that really looks remarkable in person. The only trade-off is that it's only available when scaled down to 1080p. In WQHD Plus, the phones revert all the way back to 60Hz to cut back on battery drain. I would have loved a 90Hz mode as a fallback instead of 60, but I'm just happy to see 120 regardless. Now, if you were holding out hope that Samsung would keep the headphone jack on its new phones, well, there's a nice set of USB-C headphones included in the box, or you can grab the new Galaxy Buds Plus that have 11 hours of battery life with another full charge in the case. Otherwise, sorry to say that this is just another nail in the coffin for analog wired audio on phones. That ultrasonic in-display fingerprint sensor from the S10 hasn't really improved here either. Samsung moved it up a bit to be easier to reach, but it's otherwise the same iffy sensor, which is frustrating considering how many better versions we've seen in phones like the OnePlus 7 Pro. On the flip side, Microsd is alive and well with the S20, and you get 128GB of storage plus 12GB of RAM standard across the board. On the larger 2 phones, you can bump up to 512GB, and on the S20 Ultra, that upgrade comes with an insane 16GB of RAM. You also get a 4000 mAh battery on the S20, 4500 on the Plus, and 5000 on the Ultra. The S20 series is unsurprisingly running Android 10 with Samsung's custom One UI 2. Not much has changed from One UI on Samsung's older phones, but there are a few new features like Google Duo being built right into Samsung's Dialer app for video calls, or the new ability to manually lock up to 5 apps into your system memory to keep them from closing in the background. There's also a new music share feature that lets the S20 act as sort of a middleman for Bluetooth speakers you're already paired to. If your friend wants to play music, they can pair directly to your phone instead of your various speakers, and you can choose where to route the audio from there. So let's talk about those cameras. The Galaxy S20 has the same 3-camera layout as the S10, with significantly larger wide, ultra-wide, and telephoto sensors. The main camera uses a 12-megapixel f1.8 sensor, but you can shoot it all the way up to 64 megapixels with the telephoto camera. That high-res sensor allows for 3x lossless zoom, and digital zoom adds a factor of 10, letting you get up to 30 times closer to your subject. On the S20 Plus and S20 Ultra, you get an additional depth sensor, but the big story with the Ultra is its new 108 megapixel main camera. By default, it uses 9:1 pixel binning for a 12 megapixel shot that pulls in a ton of detail and light, but you can shoot at full res if you really want to, just know that it'll eat up a ton of storage and won't be as good in low light. You also get 10x lossless zoom on the Ultra, and that same factor of 10 applies to the digital zoom here. That's where the 100 times space zoom branding comes from on the camera housing, and sure enough, you can get insanely close to a subject. Shooting that tight can be pretty disorienting though, so the camera UI gives you a helpful preview of the zoomed out shot in the corner. Samsung is also leveraging its huge new sensors and powerful hardware to let you shoot 8K video on the S20 series, and even trim, edit, and downscale your footage right on the phone. You can pull 33 megapixel stills from your 8K video and stream that video to a Samsung 8K TV, or use that fancy new 5G connection to upload straight to YouTube. There's also an improved super steady image stabilization mode that corrects for left-right rotation now, but just like on the Note 10, that's limited to 1080p. One of the new features that impressed me the most with the S20's cameras is the new single take mode. Once you hit the shutter, the S20 shoots for up to 10 seconds and captures almost every different kind of photo and video at once. You get the best results when there's some motion involved, and you can end up with stills from the main and ultra-wide camera, a portrait shot, standard and looping video, you name it. It's a pretty surefire way to get at least one good shot of a passing moment, and it's crazy impressive that the S20 can capture and process so many different kinds of shots in such a short time. So you've probably guessed by now that the S20 series is not going to be cheap. The standard S20 will run you $1,000, and if you want the S20 Plus, it'll be $1,200 to start, with a $150 upcharge if you want 512 gigabytes of storage. The S20 Ultra is a whopping $1,400, and again, that's just for the 128 gigabyte model. For the 512 with 16 gigabytes of RAM, that's another $200. On the bright side, Samsung will be offering up to $200 worth of credits once pre-orders go live on the 21st, and of course you can trade in your existing phone for even more savings. The Galaxy S20 will be in stores March 6th, and you already know we're going to have a full review of it right here, so be sure to subscribe to Android Central and check out the website for our more detailed thoughts. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.